So I recently picked up the DJI OM4 mobile phone gimbal. In this video, I'm going to show you what comes inside the box, go over some of the features, and show you some comparison footage at the end of this video. Welcome to the channel. My name is Tony, and if this is your first time with us, please consider subscribing and hit that little bell so that you're alerted to when I release new content. In full disclosure, I bought the OM4 out of my own money. I'm not a professional photographer or a filmmaker, just an enthusiast, and I normally don't do videos like this. However, it is a piece of tech, and I believe it fits within the scope of what this channel is all about. That being said, let's get started with today's video. The DJI OM4 handheld 3-axis smartphone gimbal is currently available on Amazon for $149 at the time of this recording. If you're interested in this product, I'll have a link to my Amazon store down in the video description below. So we're looking at the DJI OM4 3-axis gimbal. Inside the box you get a wrist strap, a soft carry bag, the gimbal itself, a USB-C charging cable, a spacer, 2 options for magnetic mounting, a desktop tripod, some quick start paperwork, and a clear alignment template for mounting the permanent magnet on the back of your phone. The DJI OM4, like I said earlier, is a full 3-axis gimbal. It has a very small form factor. As you can see here, it fits in the palm of my hand. It's a light colored gray, and it has a neat folding design which contributes to its small form factor. Let's look at some of the buttons on the DJI OM4. For starters, you have your shutter and record button, your on-off button, and your mode button right here. The mode button switches you in between video and photo mode, and if you press it once while the gimbal is off, it gives you a battery level check. Here is your joystick, which pans the camera left and right and tilts it up and down. Then on the front of the unit, you have a trigger. The trigger you can press and hold, and that locks the gimbal so it just moves side to side and not up and down. A double press brings the gimbal back to center alignment. And a triple press of the trigger switches between the front and rear cameras. On the side of the gimbal, you have a USB-C charging port to charge the gimbal itself. Underneath the cover here, I hope you guys can see that, you have a USB-A port for charging a cell phone. And on the bottom of the gimbal, there's a 1/4-20 for mounting on the desktop tripod or a standard tripod. The new innovation for this particular DJI OM4 gimbal is the magnetic mounting feature. DJI provides 2 ways to mount your phone, with a magnetic clip, as you see that I have attached to my phone here, and another magnet that gets permanently adhered to the back of your cell phone. This is a much more permanent mounting option. I actually prefer to use the magnetic bracket. When it comes to properly mounting the bracket to your cell phone, I just want to show you something real quick. Right here on the end of the bracket, there's an arrow. I hope you guys can see that, and that arrow has to point towards the cameras on the back of your phone. If you have that arrow on the end of the bracket pointing towards your phone cameras, then you know you've properly installed the bracket onto the phone. Now, when attaching the bracket to the gimbal, let me just unfold the gimbal here. Another thing I want to point out is, you see the dot here and the space at the top of the gimbal? You have to align. Hopefully you can see this here. You have to align the top part. There's a little dot on the gimbal here. You have to align this with this on the magnet. So let's see if we can get that done for you. And you can see it just kind of clips on, and it's not really going anywhere. Once the phone is attached to the actual gimbal using the magnetic mounting bracket, you can go ahead and turn it on by pressing and holding. And you can see the gimbal then takes its position. Now don't be alarmed if your phone doesn't look like it's perfectly balanced in the gimbal. One of the keys is to make sure that the bracket is centered on your phone as best as possible. And if it's still not perfectly balanced, you can go into the DJI Mimo app into the settings and do a gimbal calibration, and I'll show you that later on in the video. Okay, let's go over some of the functionality of the buttons on this gimbal. Now earlier I showed you that with the gimbal off, if you press the mode button once, you can get the check on the battery level. With the gimbal on, if you press the mode button once, it switches between video and photo mode. So real quick, let me just tilt the gimbal so that you can see what the overhead camera is seeing on the screen. We're in video mode now, and you can tell by the red record button there. So if I press the mode button, which is the on-off power button, one time, you should see the screen on the iPhone change to a photo mode. And there you go. If I press it again, it should switch back to video mode, which it did. One of the features of the trigger on the front is to bring your gimbal back to center alignment. So no matter what position you're in, so for example, how it's tilted down now, if I wanted to get it back to center alignment, I just press the trigger twice, and you can see the gimbal comes back to center alignment. Pressing the mode button twice switches the vertical and horizontal alignment of the phone. There you can see the phone switch to landscape mode, and if you double click again on the mode button, it switches back to vertical mode. 3 presses of the mode button puts the gimbal in standby mode. You might be able to see on the screen it says DJI is in standby mode. To get it out of standby mode, just press the mode button one time, and it brings it back to center alignment. So I showed you before how the joystick could tilt the camera. Let's put the gimbal back in landscape mode by pressing twice on the mode button. And now let's use the joystick to pan left and right. And you can see I'm panning one direction, and now we'll pan back in the other direction. Double press the trigger to return to center alignment. You saw the tilt down. Let's show you the tilt upward. Again, double press the trigger to go to center alignment. Let's bring it back so you can see the camera screen in the overhead. If we triple press the trigger button, it should switch to the other camera. And there you go. Triple press again, and it goes back to the original camera. Double press, and it brings us back to center alignment. One last feature I do want to show you using the trigger is if you press and hold the trigger, you lock the gimbal so it only moves left to right. For example, if I spin the gimbal, you can see that the camera is moving and spinning as well. However, if I press and hold the gimbal and then spin, you can see now the gimbal is locked and the camera movement is now locked. Okay, let's take a look at the app and some of its settings. We'll go through the interface a little bit. Now, I haven't played with all of the features in the app, but I just want to touch on them to show you what's available to you. Now, if you haven't already downloaded the DJI Mimo app for the OM4, you're going to need to do that and create a free DJI account and sign into the app. You do need the app to get all the extra features. Just a side note, you can use the gimbal with just the camera, built-in camera app on the phone, but you lose a lot of the features. So using the DJI Mimo app, you get a ton more features. Plus, you need the app. The app is required to actually activate the gimbal. That being said, let's look at some of the features. So we're in video mode right now. Let me just tilt this up a little bit. Like that. And on the left side of the screen, you have the option of changing from auto to manual and changing some of the functions manually. For now, we'll just leave it in auto. Right below that, you have your resolution settings. You can pick 1280 by 720, 1920 by 1080, or 3840 by 2160. You can also adjust the frame rate for each of those resolutions. Below that, you have something called glamour effects. Now, like I said, I haven't played with everything. And if you press on the three dots, it'll take you into some more of the settings. You can see that you have follow mode, sport mode, zoom speed. You can control how fast or how slow the button on the side of the gimbal zooms. And we'll talk about zoom in a minute. That's a button that I didn't show you earlier. I reserved for using in the app here, and I'll explain why in a minute. You can change a bunch of different settings, but the one I want to point out to you are two down below. The gimbal auto calibration. Like I said earlier, if you're not happy with your phone's balance on the gimbal, you can do a gimbal auto calibration. If you're not happy even after doing the auto calibration, you can actually manually go in and adjust the horizontal alignment here to your liking. And you can see here, guys, when I did the auto calibration, it adjusted it up to 2.6. On the right side of the screen, you have gesture settings. You can see here you can control the gimbal using gestures. You can enable active track. We'll talk about active track in a minute. I'll see if I can demonstrate that for you too in a second. And then you have some other options here under gesture control. If we go down the side, you have different modes here. You have story mode, which I haven't played with. I did play with pano mode. Another option is a 240-degree pano, and I'll show you that. And the last one, which is a lot of fun, but I'm not really quite sure after playing with it a few times that it'll actually be something that you use on a regular basis. But there's something called the Clone Me pano, and you can take a look at it on the screen, and it's self-explanatory once you see it. Moving on, and you have your photo and video modes. You have a slow motion up to 8 times. There's a Dynazoom, and this is like a really neat zoom feature. I haven't played with this yet. It's like a Hollywood zoom. In fact, they just added this to the Mavic Air 2 if you're into drones. I haven't had a chance to play with this yet, but maybe I will and come back and just show you what that feature is in a later video. You can do time lapse as well as hyperlapse. Let me get back into video mode. And I'm going to use the trigger to switch to the other camera. And there I am. So if I draw a box around the subject, you should be able to see that I've activated an active track now. And as I move around from left to right, you can see that the gimbal's following me. If I move faster, it follows me faster. It's got really decent tracking. If I dip down, it's dipping down. If I raise up, it's raising up. And to disable active track, just simply press the trigger button once. That being said, guys, I want to show you some comparison footage that I shot at a condo down near the beach. The first time I shot the footage, I did not use the gimbal. The second time I shot the footage, I did use the OM4. But before that, I just want to flip cameras. Let me triple press the trigger button. And I just want to go over the zoom with you one more time. I'm going to go ahead and press the shutter button twice to center align. There we go. And if you look in the center bottom part of the screen, you have your zoom control. Zoom control is based on what the capabilities of your actual phone is. For example, on this phone, I don't have the iPhone 11 Pro. I just have the traditional iPhone 11, and I only have a 0.5 zoom, as you see here, which is the wide angle, and then a one-time zoom, which is what you see here. But if I use the zoom button on the left side of the gimbal, I can zoom all the way up to 6 times zoom. Just keep in mind though, Anything beyond what's built into the camera is being done digitally, so it's a digital zoom. Here's a look at some of the footage shot without the gimbal. And here's a look at the same footage shot using the DJI OM4. Prior to a few days ago, I've had absolutely no experience or knowledge of using a gimbal of any sort. Even with very little experience, just a few days for that fact, you can see by using a gimbal how much smoother the footage really is. So if you found any value in today's video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out some of my other videos up above. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share. And thank you so much, guys, for using my Amazon affiliate links. I know they don't change your price, but they do help out the channel. My name is Tony with Quick Tech Solutions. As always, please stay safe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.